Okay, thank you, Michael. For the next 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to invite Griffin and Lisa to come back up and invite questions from the audience. Does anybody out there have any questions?
I have a question for you, Lisa. Griffin, you may know as well, but I'm wondering about response from property owners. Do you get resistance? What does that typically look like, and do you have converts later on? How do you sort of win that battle?
Can we use the mic? All right. Can you hear me? I'm really a loud talker, so you should be able to hear me. All right. Great. All right. Sorry. I hate the microphone, but I will use it. Yes, of course. We have, since we're the business improvement district, the property owners are ratepayers, and many of them sit on our board. And we have like 75 or 80% local ownership in downtown Portland, and there's just a few families that own a lot of property. So these are the same families that actually started the bid. So they're really tied into what we're doing. They have that stake in downtown redevelopment. They know us as staff, and they support our efforts. So we did have a lot of property owners that were positive from the beginning. We had some that still had questions going along. They were worried about the content of the shops, and we have rules about high quality, family friendly, they're not serving alcohol. So, we just really have to listen to them and make sure that we're upholding their high standards. We still have people that won't participate, and those people have vacant storefronts still. So we can show success for people that we've worked with, and we can show that if you don't work with us, you're not going to have the same level of success. And we, much rather use a carrot than a stick. But we also talk about some of our storefront improvement programs that are offered through the Portland Development Commission. And property owners are more likely to get one of those if they participate in our pop-up shop program. So we don't publish that, but we do gently remind them of that.
My context in it, I can switch hats a little bit to the neighborhood work I do, and also that I am a property owner up in the neighborhood. So maybe I'll speak as a property owner first, that the properties that I've gone in and bought with partners are generally underutilized, either vacant or the existing use isn't as high as it could be. And so a lot of times in my specific case, what I had to do is, I subsidized the rent to bring in the type of makers and tenants that I was interested in. So I had a garage space, and it was an old mechanics garage, and the rent I was getting I had a mechanic in there that it was more of a predatory business. It wasn't necessarily a healthy community business, and it was also visually polluting and actually environmentally polluting. So I didn't want this guy to operate. So as soon as his lease was up, I said, hey, I'm going to go a different direction. And there was a hackerspace looking for space, and I was like, hey, I want you guys up here with me in this garage. And they're like, we can't afford the rent, and what you need is property owners that do understand and will take the risk, because so I lowered the rent from $700 to $300, and it was a decision because the gap between the rent wasn't as important to me as having this hacker space in this area that I'm trying to work on. So I guess what you need is community-minded developers and property owners, and that's the big thing. And another thing we run into a lot in Lexington is there's a lot of vacant storefronts for the reason Lisa's talking about, where people just don't want to move off the property. Maybe it's multi-generational ownership, so there's not a need there's not an economic need to move the property. But what you need is kind of new property owners and really control. I mean, that's what it all gets down to, is if you're able to control the sites, and maybe you can't get one property owner to budge, but you can get another one. And there's a good example of vacants in Oklahoma City. They have a vacant storefront tax that they were able to put through. So it basically, if you had a vacant storefront, they would start taxing the storefront. So you then had an initiative to move on it. And if you got curmudgeon-y about it, then they would essentially land bank your building. So as from a policy side, I mean, that's one thing we haven't really addressed, that these are mainly grassroots initiatives, but there's a lot of stuff from a policy side, and maybe we'll get into that later on, that a municipality and community could really work on. I'll turn it over to Mike if he has. Michael, if you have any questions
Yeah,
about that.
you know, those are great points. We're very, very intentional with, you know, choosing the building owners that we want to work with. You know, we often have that luxury of choice, but we're very intentional in terms of what neighborhoods we go into and what building owners we, you know, choose to work with. And the program is always better if you have better building owners, and that's, you know, it makes your life a lot easier, and you know, and it's a way too, if you know, have one of those key storefronts with the bad building owner, if you partner with others and you demonstrate success, they eventually come along. You know, in some cases when we have, you know, financial assistance to help pay for, you know, build out at the space, it's typically very easy to get them to come on board. But we found, especially up on Livernois Avenue, where we're working now, the Avenue of Fashion, that, you know, people want the area to come back. And, you know, like's been said before, I mean, you know, most of the building owners have good intentions about bringing the community back. And, you know, those are the type of people that we want to work with. So, you know, we're picky with who we choose to work with on the building owner side. And if there's building owners that aren't ready yet, we're just patient and wait for them to come along after we've proven what's possible.
This is a question for Michael. I'm so impressed with everything that you guys are doing in Detroit. It's just really inspiring for the rest of the country, I think.
Thanks.
I'm really curious, where is the Mies van der Rohe Shopping Center? Because I'd really love to go to Detroit and explore some of these areas. Maybe they're on your website, exact addresses?
Yeah, so if you go to revolvedetroit.com, we have a little area called Spaces on our website where you can see the map of the different spaces that we've done. It's not as visual as I would like it, but it's basically on the edge of downtown, and it's a very high concentration of people of all different spectrums. I mean, you know, there's politicians that live in the large Mies van der Rohe towers, you know, the full spectrum of people. So that was a fun one. You know, the city's 140 square miles, so with limited resources and limited time, you know, we try to kind of prioritize areas that are really close to, they're just at the cusp of really coming back and really reemerging as a business district again. So we really try to focus on those areas that need a little bit of help to get over the hump, as opposed to focusing in areas like downtown. You know, we have, you know, the founder of Quicken Loans, Dan Gilbert, is, you know, doing incredible things down here as well on the whole pop-up side, and you know, in terms of the placemaking side of the equation, and you know, going on a shopping spree of, you know, buying skyscrapers and activating them. You know, it's not the typical scenario of the private market working, but you know, again, they don't need as much help of our help here to get things done as some of these other neighborhoods. So, you know, we always try to go with areas that are right at the cusp so we can achieve great things and then move on to the next. And we'd love to get you in Detroit. I'd love to show you around.
Thank you.
I was wondering if any of you are partnering with your local colleges and students, and if so, how?
Yeah, we actually partner with 3 of our local colleges. So we've got an art institute. I know they're nationwide. So, oh, sorry, microphone.
Sorry, microphone.
All right.
So we partner with the Art Institute, which is a for-profit college. It's nationwide. In Portland, they have a really strong emphasis on fashion and fashion design. And just a quick plug for Portland, we have 4 Project Runway winners from Portland. So we've got a lot of emerging fashion designers in Portland. So we definitely partner with them. We have tried to get them to operate their own shop. Actually, for the past 4 years, we've been talking to them, and I will continue to talk to them because it is something I'd love to see a class on that. We work with a MFA program. It's a PNCA, Pacific Northwest College of Art, and OCAC, Oregon College of Arts and Crafts, and they partner together. They have an MFA program. They actually help build fixtures for our stores. So we meet with them early on in the process and have collaborative design sessions. So they've gone and helped us on that side. They're not interested in opening a store. We do usually a 1-month pop-up for them in May or June where the seniors will present their thesis presentations in a vacant storefront downtown. So it's a 1-month activation, and it's like a gallery space. So we work with them on that. And then we've talked to another local university, but they were more focused on art and social practice, which maybe is a little controversial for us. Again, we try to keep it family friendly and not too politically heavy, and they wanted to do maybe more impactful art installations that maybe didn't make us comfortable. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Lexington has a great asset of some higher education universities where there's downtown. Is anybody familiar with Lexington? Some of you guys. So basically, we have a pretty intact downtown that did get hurt a little bit by urban renewal. And then on the south side of downtown, about 4 blocks, is the University of Kentucky, our flagship university. And on the north side of downtown is 4 blocks is Transy University, which is a liberal arts college with about 1,000 students. And UK has somewhere between 15 and 20,000 students. And then the area that I'm working in is actually just north of Transy and about 8 blocks north of downtown, the North Limestone Corridor. And so we work, universities play such a pivotal role in it. One, just in terms of new economy, that every year you have this population generation for your town of a group that wasn't there before. So, in UK's case, it's 4,000 students that come in, and then you have this new market. So that's also a great group to market to. And one thing you can do to retain students is, as they come in, get them engaged with the community. So UK does a really cool thing. They do teach a class called Community 101, which the goal of the class is to get students off of just campus and to see what else is going on in the neighborhoods and have them experience other things. So they have that connection to place that's developing the whole time that they're matriculating through their degree. And so on the flip, that when they get out of college, they might say, hey, there's something here for me. I'm glued to this place. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's also, we've engaged a lot with the colleges of design. We're doing a small house symposium for the Shotgun House deal. And we're also teamed up with the landscape architect department and urban planning to we have a free trolley system that underperforms, but has this amazing opportunity for connectivity throughout our city. And so working on ways to make the trolley more desirable, so increase ridership, increase connectivity. So that was all through upper level landscape architect students. And then through Transy actually teaches a class called Community Engagements Through the Arts, and a big part of it is social engagement, and it's taught by an English professor and an art teacher, and their whole goal is to get their students, again, off the island, that's their actual campus, out into the neighborhood and to learn about the neighborhood. And they do a really interesting, engaged art project every year. A couple years back, they did oral histories, and they did this really fun thing where they worked with the local artists to make all these wooden dolls, and then they hid them 1,000 dolls all over the street, and they had little clues, and it was a scavenger hunt to explore. And then They did these two professors did something really important that was really cool. They did, and actually Cincinnati's about to do this, they did the Lexington Tattoo Project where they had a woman, a local poet, write a poem, and then they found 250 Lexingtonians to get parts of the poem tattooed on their body. And it's, in terms of like placemaking, it's the strongest piece of community engagement art that I've ever been a part of. And our CDC was a sponsor of it. It happened in a newly renovated tattoo parlor that's in our area of town, and it engaged and excited this whole community. So that's, tattoos are pretty permanent, I think. But it was university driven. So I would think, tap into, and Michael's first thing is your community building and your stakeholder, your partner identification, huge assets within the university. So please engage with them. Sorry for blabbing. Michael?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm totally digging the tattoo project, so the wheels are turning. But I want to give props to one of my fellow organizations here, the Jefferson East Business Association. I think they, in my mind, provide an incredible model of how to work with students. So they engaged the local student chapter of the American Institute of Architects. And so, they basically transformed, a couple blocks all at once with, both, bachelor and master's degree architecture students. And, they had a few, maybe professors or kind of supervisors on role, but, as a supervisor role. But for all intents and purposes, the students, so they matched the students up with the entrepreneurs. They had a charrette. And then the students just went to town building it. And, of course, they brought all their parents in and their friends. And from a design standpoint, it was phenomenal. And, from a cost standpoint, it was pretty darn good too. So, I think that that's a good model. It's Jefferson East Business Association, and their kind of pop-up series is June on Jefferson. And I think for me, it was incredibly powerful to see what a lot of great young energy can do when, they get out of the classroom and, can actually practice their trade. I thought was really exciting. We're, up on the Avenue of Fashion, there's actually 2 universities, and the students largely do not patronize the businesses there at all. And a big part of what we're trying to do there is to engage that community. And we're struggling a little bit right now because it's the summer, and Jefferson East really took all these great students and put them to work, and they're kind of burnt out right now. But we really want the students themselves to engage in rebuilding the business district. So again, when I mentioned, those volunteer weekends where we have people come out and paint, getting the students to do that is really important to make them feel a part of it, because then they're vested and they'll bring their friends up. The other thing that we're going to do on Livernois is we're going to dedicate a space for student installations. And, we have all these artists from all over the world coming in, and it'll be full swing when they come back in fall. We're going to match the students up with some of these, national and international and great Detroit artists to do their own student installation. So we haven't really figured out how that's going to work yet, but I'm excited at the possibilities, because I agree, it is about, retaining and attracting talent. It's about leveraging that, commerce opportunity from a spending standpoint. And, too, a lot of it's about energy. And, I think, in Detroit, as in any, any major central city, the universities always play a prominent role, and, figuring out all the different leverage points is really important. So we're excited to engage the students in this round of projects.
Thank you. I'm getting the note to wrap it up. We do have another panel happening at 3 o'clock. So I think we have time for one more question with more brief answers. How about that? Okay.
This question is directed at Lisa and Michael. I represent the group the Chamber S group that is trying to start the bid. And I'm curious as to, this can take on non-traditional roles where bid groups are doing things that cities used to do. And
Right.
You've talked in your organizations about how you take a very active role in economic development and filling storefronts. So what should our aim be as we try to take up a share of the work so the city isn't doing it all without treading into the city's area? And that we're fortunate we have a very productive relationship with the city and working relationship, but I want to get your quick thoughts on that, both of you.
That's a really good question. It's a different situation here in Detroit. The mantra "Detroit hustles harder" is definitely true, and where others don't have the time or capacity or resources to do it, a few of us rally around the idea and just partner to do it. So I think it's more about the goal of what you're trying to achieve. And, I think involving the city and asking them what role they want to play in it is really important. I will say this, last year when we were, at kind of the peak of our, visibility and popularity, we met with our parent organization at the state, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. They were thinking about some of these things too. And, that relationship, doing this sort of stuff with the state agency, I think is relatively new. And we talked about, scaling this model in some other cities. And I think it's just, I think you just need to ask your partners what you want out of it, because I do think when it's a team effort, it can be much stronger. And if everybody feels like they're contributing in a way that plays to their strengths, and that they're not being asked to do something that they're not comfortable with doing or don't have resources to do, I think it ends up being a really good experience. And to be honest, when we first started doing this work, I mean, there was a lot of trust building that needed to be done with the communities, because this was not our reputation or our image for doing this sort of thing. Now the partnership aspect of this has really kind of, it's changed the conversation in the CDC community to a whole different level. Before, where, people were fighting over resources together to do this sort of stuff, we're just teaming up and, writing grants together to do it. And that's been a big success for me, is do it as a team. And, especially in terms of fundraising, when you leverage partnerships, it works really well. And, in the bid, I mean, you have a different set of resources and strengths and relationships that the city does, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's a huge benefit. So I think just know what your goal is. If the partnership opportunity is right, just ask people what they want to get out of it and respect that, and then know your strengths and stay in your lane, and work on that sort of stuff together. So that's how we go about it. Did that help?
Yes, very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's about partnerships and bailiwicks. So, Chamber is great for promoting commerce, and they have expertise. They also have a lot of great private funders that you can tap into. So it's just about talking to people. I mean, we talk about it's an alphabet soup in downtown Portland, but we all have the same goal, and we all work together, and that's how it works. So, it's different in every city, but you can find at least some partners.
Thank you. All right. Well, if you do have questions still, the good news is that at 5 o'clock, there will be a happy hour at Three Kings, which is just on the other side of these buildings here on West Pike Street. And our guests, unfortunately, we can't really carry around a laptop to bring Michael with us, but
I would be happy to, drink a martini in the office with you guys. I definitely need one right now.
But Griffin and Lisa will be with us, which before we head on to the next part of the presentation, we're going to get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of our local region and experience. And it's really fun because we're going to do it in the nitty-gritty of our building stock around here. And so briefly following two announcements that will come right after me, I would like everyone who is interested in continuing on to walk over to the Mutual building. So you'll walk, you'll take a right, and then you'll take a left and the Mutual building is the building that sits here on Madison between West 7th and Pike. And there we're going to be talking a little bit about regulatory issues. And from there we'll make 3 more stops, and then we'll end at happy hour where there'll be opportunity for more